I would prefer you to install VS Code, which is really cool. So this is VS Code. Um, it's a free tool IDE, which you should be able to install. Okay. Um, okay. So let's start with the JavaScript basics. Um, what is how to define a variable? So in JavaScript, there used to be an older way of defining variable. For example, we used to do var, uh, let's say I. Okay, this is how you can define variable in JavaScript. But var is an old way of doing it. Okay, I would prefer not to use this. If you're using any modern JavaScript framework, if you're going for an interview and things like that, I would always want to use either let I or const I. Okay, we're going to look at the differences between all of these, but I would say don't use this. Use let or const. Okay, so what is the meaning of let? So let's say if I have a variable called my dog's name. Okay. Does anybody know what would be the value of it? Because I have defined this variable, but I haven't assigned a value to it. Do you guys know what the value of this variable is going to be?
Undefined?
Yes.
Null or undefined. Yeah.
Yes. So this. Yes. So it's going to be undefined. So in JavaScript, when you define a variable but not assign a value to it, which is fine. Yes, the class is being recorded. So this is how you can define a variable. So when you don't assign a value, JavaScript has, this is a placeholder. It always is going to be undefined. If I do console log of my dog's name, okay, it will, and run it, I would see undefined here, right? And so do you guys also know what is the valid variable name that JavaScript accepts?
Yeah.
Okay, can you tell me?
Camel, like camel. Do we call it camel? Like small capital. First letter should not be small, capital or number or something like that. It should start with small letter.
Okay, so there are three rules. So one of them is correct. So there are three rules. Okay, and it's important to know them because when you define a variable, there are two things. First of all, you need to have a valid variable. Second thing is how to define a variable properly so that it's readable. It's about the standard, how if you go for an interview or anywhere, your team would know that this is a right way to do it. There's an industry standard for pretty much everybody. Okay, so for example, if I do, the first rule is it cannot start with a number. Okay, what does it mean? I cannot have a variable name that is let 1a. You see it complains right now. says unexpected one. You know why you cannot start with a number? Anybody? Okay, I'll tell you why. Um, if I have a variable, that is like this, let1, first of all, then JavaScript doesn't know if this is a number or a variable, right? That's why, because JavaScript allows even single digit, so I can have I as a variable, or I can have, very long name as a variable, right? So that's why it doesn't want you to start with a number, so it doesn't want to get confused. However, you can have A1, this is fine. So you can have a number after the variable name, but you should not have number on the first position of the variable. So A1 is not good, but 1A is not good, but A1 is fine. Okay, so it should not start with a number. The second rule is cannot have underscore. Oh, sorry, cannot have. Can have only two special characters. Do you know two special characters? Special characters are non-alphanumeric. You know what an alphanumeric is? Alphanumeric is like A to Z and number. These are called alphanumerics. Beyond anything that's I would call it special characters, like let's say percentage style. Percentage, okay, is a special characters. JavaScript allows only two special characters. Do you know which two special characters are allowed?
No, I didn't know about this even. Special characters.
Yeah.
Like dollar.
Okay. And which one?
I don't want just dollar. Right?
Okay, dollar. Okay, yeah. So that is correct. Dollar is one of them. Okay. If you have done some jQuery, you might have used dollar, let's say color, something like this, right? So dollar is one of them. Another one is called underscore. So you can do this, right? This is also allowed. Okay. But beyond this two, you cannot use any other. Like I cannot do percentage or and or this, all of these are not allowed. Or exclamation mark or tilde, I cannot use it as a variable. Okay. Even dollar is, I can simply use dollar and it's a valid variable. Or I can use this. It's kind of weird, but you can do it. This is a valid variable, or simply all underscore. It's a valid variable. Okay. So that's a second rule. Can have only two special characters, and that is $sign and underscore. And you can even use at a first position or last position, doesn't matter. Okay. So yeah, so this, if you follow these rules, there are other rules, but I simplify into these two rules. Okay. That's why now let's move to the cases. When you define a variable, what is the best way to name your variable? So for example, my dog's name, right? This is called camel cases. This is called camel case. You know why there's a camel case? Because, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we cannot give spaces and to make it understand by other developers, so that if you wouldn't go for camel case,
Yeah.
it's hard to read.
Yeah, you cannot have spaces. That's true because spaces are not allowed, right? Because it's not alphanumeric. Uh, also, you can the meaning here, right? My dog's name. I know what that means. If I have one line, my dog's name, it's hard to read. Okay, so this is a camel case, and this is the most popular one. Uh, if I have a counter, internal counter, I can use this fine for temporary. This is also fine. Okay, um, anything that is internal, a local variable, I should be able to do this underscore I. Something that is local, like um, that's gonna be inside the function and it stays there. Okay, you can decide this more often when you we're gonna look at it how to do it properly inside when we start doing it, but this is a one way of doing it. Okay, another popular case is called uh, snake case. So let's say my dog's name. This is called snake case. You know why this is a snake case? Because of it touches the ground. Camel case is because of the hump, right? It looks like D is the hump, N is a hump of a camel, and this is called snake case because of it touches the bottom. There is another famous case, but which we cannot use. It's this way: my dog's name. There is a dash in between. Why we cannot use this? This is called kebab case. Do you know why we cannot use kebab case? Okay, the reason you cannot use it because dashes are not allowed. Remember, only two special characters. It can be either underscore, which touches the ground, or dollar sign. So that is why this is not valid. So you can only use snake case or camel case. Okay. If I'm building some sort of constant, for example, pi. So in that case, I can use all caps, right? Well, I have to give it a value, 3.14, let's say. CONST. Okay. Oh, CONST. Okay. So use caps for anything that is a constant. Constant numbers are mostly like a famous constant, right? Not for objects, because as we're gonna learn that you can use const for object as well, but this is for like numbers or names, constants. Okay. Um, for anything that is an object, like a class, if I have to say class, then I would use my dog's name. So this is more like, as you can see, it's also camel case, but it has a first letter capital. Okay, so this is what we use for like a class name. All right. So if you follow this pattern, and I want you to follow this pattern. So if you go for an interview, right? If you don't follow this pattern, then it may look like your programming skills are not that great, because interviewer look at it, say, oh, this, if I, let's say, if I have a class name, if I use this way, or if I use a snake case, they may say, oh, this guy probably doesn't know much. Okay, so you need to follow it. All right. So any questions so far?
No, not right.
All right. Okay.
No.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
No questions. We can do it. Yeah.
All right. Okay, good. Okay, now let's assign a value to a variable. So as I said, there are two ways to do it. I can say let my let's say dog's name. Let's say I'm gonna call it Cujo. Okay, Cujo is a famous movie where this dog kills everybody. So it's an interesting dog's name. As you can see, this is a string, right? So what happens? Inside, when I do this, let's say if I change, initially I had something like this, like my dog's name, and then I should not be doing this because I have defined a variable once. I should not be defining again in the same block. Okay, this I consider as a block. What is a block? Block is anything that is in between something like this. Right now, this is what I'm typing is called global space because everything is outside. Okay, because I haven't defined anything, but it is also a block. It's called global block. So for this, within the same block, I should not be defining the same variable again. So instead, I should just simply do this, right? So I define the variable and I assign the value, or I can do this, my dog's name equal to Cujo, right? The both are valid. But what really happens in the first way is initially it's going to be undefined, and here is going to be Cujo, and here it's going to be directly Cujo, right? So it doesn't change its value. Well, this should be let. Okay. The second way of doing is const, but for the primitive value, I cannot do it. So if I, let's say, use const here and do this way, it won't work. You know why it won't work? Anybody can tell me why it won't work this way? If I use const instead of let?
I mean, I have seen your video, so like const, we have once the value is undefined, we can't change the constant value.
Yes. Yeah. So that is why when you do the const, you cannot think of this way. Instead of changing the value, think of this way, is once I use const, I should not be using equal sign again. It won't let me use equal sign again.
Yeah, you can add something, but you cannot reassign.
Yes, reassigning. Yes, you can change something, but you cannot reassign. Yeah. So this is actually reassigning, right? It's not changing. Okay. So what's the difference between changing and reassigning?
It's like it was already suppose Cujo was already there, and then we are changing it. We are adding something, or we are subtracting something. Like, but reassigning is like totally there is some different name instead of Cujo or something like this. Like updating with new values. Yeah, updating with new values, you can say.
Yes. So this is called strings. So in JavaScript, we're gonna look at the types, okay? But if you look at this is a string, right? And in JavaScript, strings are non-mutable. Non-mutable means you cannot change its value. You can only replace it, right? For example, if I have an object, I haven't learned the object, we haven't learned the object, but let's say I have some sort of array, right? This is an array with one element, and I can have a const here, perfectly fine. Now I can push new value to it too. And so the array now here will become, it will have two elements, 1 and 2, right? This is, I am changing the value. I am not, as you can see, I'm not using equal sign again. So I'm not reassigning the value to array, but I can change the array. When it comes to strings, numbers, booleans, they are called non-mutable values, which means I cannot really change its value. I can only replace its value, if you think of that way, right? For example, if I want to change this to Cujo1, there is no way to add 1 at the end of the string, right? There is no method or anything that exists that would do something like this, Cujo1, right? If I want to replace this value, I have to do this. I have to do this, which means I'm using equal sign again, which means I'm replacing the value. And in this case here, I am actually adding a new value to it. Okay, so that's the main difference. Changing value versus replacing. Okay, so const.
So variable,
yeah, go ahead.
So variable values can't be changed. I mean, object values can be changed. That's right.
Yeah, object value can be changed and also can be replaced as well. But
can be replaced.
Yeah, so for example, in this case, line 9, right, and line 10, I am actually adding a new element to it. So I'm not replacing it. But I could have done this. I could have done this, array equal to 1, 2, right? This is not permitted because I'm using equal sign again, and this is a const, it won't let me do it. So it's the same thing. Here also I'm going to have 1 and 2, right? And here also I'm going to have 1 and 2, but line 10 is not valid because I have const. So it won't let me replace it. It only let me change it like in 11. So that's the main difference. This is a very important concept. If you understand this, you would, it will really help you. This is the kind of fundamental I want you to just think and practice it. Okay, is it clear?
Yes.
All right. And Bhuvneshwari, are you? Is this clear to you, or you can type a message there, or if you have any questions? Okay, good. All right. So, yeah. So always remember changing versus replacing. Changing is allowed in let. Replacing also allowed in let. Changing is allowed in const, but replacing is not allowed in const, right? Think of when you change and replace, I think of this way, right? Let's say if you are living in an apartment and you add a new room to that apartment. I am living in the same address. I just added a new room. So that's a change. But if I just move to a different address, then it's a replacement, right? Because I am actually not living there And actually, in inside the memory, it's doing the same thing. When you replace the value, so that is the main difference. So here at line 9, let's say this variable is living at some memory. Let's say just call it 123. It's a memory in the computer. Okay. When I in 11, if I replace the value completely, it will have to move somewhere else to 124 or somewhere, right? It was initially at this memory location. Now it has moved to 124. Let's say if it's a let, because const won't even allow to replace, but let's say if it's a let, it used to live at 123. Now if I completely replace it, it would live at 124 or some other memory location. The computer decides where it's going to live, right? But if I just push, that means it still lives at the same place, 123, in the memory. Usually when it's the array, it remembers of where the first element is located. Okay, so that's how it works. And it's also important to notice that, because in your brain you need to realize that this is what's happening. So if you reassign the value, then it moves the address in the memory. If you just change its value, it still lives at the same address. Okay. Okay, so let's move to now different types. So as we looked at, right, primitive types. So what are the primitive types in JavaScript? Anybody can tell me what are the primitive types?
I don't remember exactly. There are two types, primitive and non-primitive. It's data types like string, number,
Yeah.
boolean, null, undefined, and there is one sixth one in ES6. I don't remember the name of it. Something like.
Yes. So there. Yes. So it's numbers, boolean, string, undefined, null, and there is another one called symbol. We're gonna look at symbol later on, but yeah, these are called primitive types. The speciality of primitive type is they are non-mutable, which means you can only replace them. You cannot change their values. That's the speciality of primitive types. And it's also a single value, right? So numbers is like one is a one number. It's a single value. If I have an array, I have multiple values inside, right? And then we have object types. Do you know what are these?
No.
Okay, object types are JavaScript objects, arrays, then functions, then you would have and there are some other like there are string buffers, and there are some other ones, right? Maps, things like that. We're gonna look at it, but they're all kind of a complex. It has multiple values inside. Okay. If everybody know cricket, right? At least in India. So if I say, give me let's say, number of matches Dhoni has played, right? You can give it in one number. So that would be a primitive types. Or if I say, can I know all the matches of Dhoni? Then I would have to give you an object where I can say first match was this much score, second match was this much score, and all that stuff. You can have more of the detail inside, right? So they are the object types. Object types are also called a reference type. Oh, Sahil wants me to make a presenter. Okay, sure.
No, it's not mistakenly. I clicked.
Okay, okay, sure.
Sorry.
No problem. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So let's look at the primitive type first, and then we'll look at the object types. Okay. So in the primitive types, we have first primitive type is obviously strings, right? So when I say my dog's name equal to Cujo, this is a string, right? I am using this single quote. What other things can I use? How many different type ways I can write this? Anybody knows this?
I didn't understand the question actually.
Oh, so the question is, I'm using here the single quotes, right? Strings always are wrapped around quotes. So here I have single quotes. What other kind of quotes can I use?
Double.
Yes, I can have double quotes as well. What else?
This is one thing, asterisk we call. I don't know what's the name of it. Like the key below the escape ES6 feature.
Escape. Okay.
The back. What do you call?
Backtick. Yes.
Yeah, back.
Yeah, yes. It's called backtick. You can use it like this. Okay. All three are valid. Okay. Now, let's see if I want to have, if I want to say something like this. My dog's name is Cujo. If I want to print my string like this, how would I do that?
My dog's name is single quote like.
Okay, yes, that's a one way. So if I did this way, okay, so let's try this. I can say, I can do this way, right? If I wrap it in a single quote, and let's see if it works. Well, I have to console log it. So you can see, as you can see, it says my dog's name is Cujo, right? Is there any other way to do it without, let's say if I don't want to use this, double quotes directly. Is there any other way to do it? What if I want to use a single quotes here and then also keep the single quotes outside?
Yeah, like with the forward slash or backward slash.
Yes.
Escape
you need to escape it. Yes. So you have to do something like this. Okay. Oh, sorry, my bad. Okay. So you can escape it like this. Okay. But from all three, which one is the best way? Single quote, double quote, or backtick?
Most of the times we use single quotes, I guess, but I
Yes.
don't know the best.
Yeah. So by standard, I would say if you inside the JavaScript, uh, mostly use this. Okay. Um, let's say if I want to do something like this, my dog's name is this, then I would rather use backtick here, right? And then I don't really have to escape this, right? And that's the best way because you probably not never gonna you can wrap it with a double quote or single quotes inside around the Cujo, but you would never have like a backtick, right? So this is the best way. Okay, so do not so even though this is double quote is valid, don't use it. Use this a template. This is called template string. Use it um, when you have to do something like this. I can also have a variable, right? So my let's say if I have a variable call first, and here I want to say my first dog's name is Cujo. Then I can do something like this is called template string. Okay, so now if I use it, it says my first dog's name is Cujo, right? This is called template string. So when you're using the template string, where I'm actually using a variable inside a string, use um, backtick. Okay, but when it comes to HTML, use double quotes. Okay, and that's a kind of a standard. You use double quotes inside HTML, single quotes inside JavaScript, and backtick when you have to do something like this, where you're actually using a variable inside a string. Any questions so far?
No.
Okay. All right. So um, length of the string, you can have very long length of the string. It should not create any problems. Um, you can have an empty string. That is a fine too. So I can do something like this. It's fine, right? This is an empty string. Um, yeah. Again, strings are primitive type so that you cannot change it. They're non-mutable, but you can replace its value. All right. Let's look at numbers. So um, let's say count equal to 1. Now, do we know how to do floating points? You know what floating points is, like a 1.5. Everything in JavaScript, if you go to learn Java has, um, if you have learned Java, then you would have, you would see like integer, something like that, and count equal to 10, right? This means it has a specific meaning to it. that this is an integer. So I cannot do like 10.9. But in JavaScript, there is only one kind of number, and that is this. You can do this. You can do 1. You can do this. It doesn't matter. It's called number. And if I want to find out if something is a number or not, there is actually a function called typeof. And if I do console log typeof, this should give me the type of. If I run this, as you can see, it gives me number. So for anything, let's say if I have an array inside of, if I put quotes around it, that means it's no longer a number, right? It's a string. If I run it, then it says string. If I say true, which is a boolean, then it would say boolean. If I have an array and I run this, it's an object. Okay, so typeof is very useful because it tells you, if you pass a variable, it will tell you what it is, right? Let's say if I don't have a value, then it would tell me undefined, right? Because it is an undefined. Okay. Another thing is, if you want to know what is the maximum allowed number, right? There is a library that is available. JavaScript has lots of libraries available inside, okay, on the global space. So if I do console.dir, dir means give me more information about this. And if I type in number, and as you can see, I'm doing capital N. And if I run this, I would get this. And if I expand it, I would see lots of other things. This means there are lots of different kinds. So here I can say max safe integer. Means this is the biggest integer value, biggest possible integer value that I can use inside JavaScript. Max value means just any max value, floating point or anything. I cannot use more integer that is more than this. But if it's a floating point, this is the maximum value. Okay. As for also for negative, this is the minimum smallest integer, and same thing, smallest value inside for the floating points. It also have infinity and minus infinity. Okay. And it has a bunch of functions as well. So it has one thing called is nan, which means if something is number or not, you can do it. So for example, let's say if I have here, if I have a number, and if I do console log is nan count, it should be false. Nan means not a number. Is this not a number? No, it is a number, so that's why it's give you false, right? But if I make it a string, and run this, hold on, let me clear this. And is NaN. Oh, it. This is one of the messed up thing. Even though it's a string, it converts it into string and tells me because it's still a number. So that is a you have to do this to get it true. That's one of the tricky thing about JavaScript. Because it's a number, it it's a string, but string with a quotes around, right? That's why NaN would think, oh yeah, it is still a number. Okay, so you can use all those uh, methods that is available inside the number library. You don't have to make your own, right? Uh, okay. Um, Boolean, as I said, it's very simple. Uh, it only has two values. Yeah, either true or false, right? Um, as you can see, there is no quotes around it. Otherwise, it becomes a string. Okay. And the type of this would be Boolean. Then we also have null, primitive value. Do we know what is null? Why do we use it? Anybody?
Just to define something is empty, like some variable is empty, or just it have a null value. It doesn't have any value.
Yes, but I can also do with undefined, right? What is the difference between null and undefined?
We undefined is we didn't define the value. We can define it, like we can give it the value, but suppose we are using, I think, let.
Mm-hmm.
No, no. Null is we already give some value, which is null. Undefined is we didn't give any value.
Yes, that's the main difference. Undefined means it automatically JavaScript automatically gives it a value. First time you assign a variable but don't if you define a variable but don't assign a value to it, it automatically puts undefined, right? And that's the only time you should see undefined. However, null is you are intentionally making it null. Means you're cleaning it up. So for example, let's say I have a count equal to 2, and then I would say count equal to null. So I can empty count now, right? So I did it manually. JavaScript never would assign any value to null. It would do undefined but not null. So that's the main difference. Okay. But the tricky thing is you can actually do this. But don't do this. It works, but don't do this, right? You can actually say count equal to undefined. Um, it's kind of not a good idea because it still works. It's a valid syntax and everything, but it's not a good idea to this way you can, let's say if I am looking at I'm debugging something, and if I look count and I don't know what the value, and if I see undefined, instantly I would know that, oh, it's a variable that I defined, but I did not assign a value to it. But if I see null, that means, oh, I cleaned it up manually, not JavaScript. Okay, so if you do something like this, then you get confused. Is this me or the JavaScript, right? That's why you should not do this. And that this is a typical JavaScript interview question. What is the difference between undefined and null? I it's a weird question, but you can answer it like this: that you can clean up the value using null, and JavaScript sets kind of a placeholder when you don't have a value, and that is undefined. Okay, but they are kind of the same. Um, the only difference is, I believe, is if I try to type off, so console log type off count, which is right now undefined, right? Then it is undefined, but I think if it's null, it's an object. This is a mistake in JavaScript, but yeah, it's not saying. So that's another difference. That type of undefined is undefined. Type of null is object. It's kind of weird, like other weird things in JavaScript. That's another thing. Okay. All right. So that's all about the primitive types. I think that you need to know. Um, and as I said, I'm just going to teach you things that you really. I mean, with JavaScript you can go deeper and deeper, and there's so many things, right? But if you know this much, so to recap, the primitive types are number, strings, booleans, undefined, null, and symbol. I haven't looked at symbol yet. We'll look at it later on because it's not very useful and it has specific application. So, but just remember that there is another thing called symbol, which was defined in ES6. Okay. Um, Primitive types are non-mutable. You can only change their value. You cannot modify it, and it's a single value. That is why you cannot change it, right? Um, um, and then the difference between undefined and null I just showed you. Okay, and inside for the number for the strings, you can use single quotes, double quotes, and backtick, but always use single quotes for simple strings. If I want to do mix the variables and strings, interpolate basically, I should use template string, which are using backticks. Okay. And as for the numbers, there is a number library which has lots of function like is NaN, is infinity, and it has some fixed value like what's the maximum allowed integer, what is maximum allowed number, minimum allowed integer, minimum allowed number called safe integer. Yeah. Okay. So that should pretty much cover all the thing about primitive types. Okay. Um, now let's look at some methods for numbers, for strings, let's say. Do you guys know, anybody's got any idea on methods that are available in for strings and how do we access them?
No, I think I might use them, but I don't know. Like the thing which I use is called methods or something like that. So,
Like for example, if I say string.length, right? Then it will give you the length of the string.
yes.
Yeah. Where is it coming?
I
Where is it coming from? Do we know that?
because string act as a array, so it's array properties dot length. We can reverse a string by using reverse property.
Yeah, but remember, strings are still primitive objects, right? Primitive. So they're not objects. Sorry, strings are primitive types. So it does not have. They're not objects, so they should not have methods because methods only are in objects, not inside the primitive types. But I can do something like this. I can say let my dogs name equal to Cujo, and then I can say my dog's name dot length, right? And that should print the name of length of the right. Why? So why? How can we use this? Where is this coming? It is very important to know, I think.
As per my knowledge, like this string, like Cujo, will act as an array. So these are the properties of array. So anything applies to arrays will apply for strings too.
Okay. What about? Okay. Okay. So to answer your question, this is really what happens. So in JavaScript, strings are actually really primitive types. They don't have any methods. So you should not be able to apply any methods, but that kind of restricts our world, right? Um, there is in the JavaScript, there is also another way to define string, which is called using constructor. This is called literal, by the way. Okay. You can also do this one. Let my dog's name equal to new string. This is called object constructor. Right? There are two ways to do it. I should not.
String should be an object, right?
Okay. So you see I do use a capital string here. Right? So this is actually an object. So let's look at it. And then I'll tell you what's the difference, right? Because we are saying that strings are actually primitive types. So if I look at this string, well, console. Oh. As you can see, this is an object. I can see 0, 1, 2, 4 elements inside, and it behaves like an array because it is an array, and it has all the methods. One other thing is it has also length, and it has all the methods that you can apply to this string, right? But if you look at the end of it, there is a thing called primitive value, which is Cujo. The primitive means if this string was a primitive, then this would be the value. Otherwise, it's an array, right? Because I used it as a constructor, I created an array. Okay, and if I do type of this, I would get an object. This is no longer an array because I used this string constructor. So if this is an object and this is a primitive type string, how come this has all these methods? You see my problem? If I do console log, I should not see any methods now because now this is purely a string, right? Now this is a string purely. It should not have any methods. But somehow magically I can. You see this? It should not have any methods, but somehow magically I can use methods on it, just like you know, as if it's an object. And that is because JavaScript has a concept called autoboxing. What is autoboxing is, it will, when you do something like this, if I do my dog's name dot length, um, it knows that this is a string and it cannot have methods. So what it would do, it would temporarily convert to string object and find the length, because then the object would have length, right? So it's a trick which is called autoboxing. And that is why all the primitives can have the methods. Okay? So for example, if I want to see what methods I can use on this, all I have to do is simply do this. If I try that, then it would give me the same thing. Okay? So it's underscore underscore proto underscore underscore. Any questions? This is the tricky stuff, but I think it's important to know that if you apply some methods, you need to know where it's coming from, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Autoboxing concept was introduced from the beginning of JavaScript.
I believe so, yeah. Yeah. Because length is available from the beginning, right? You can also do like, see here, all these methods, like index of. So I can say index index of. Basically, I can say, does it have u in it, right? And that should tell me if it has a u in it or not, right? So it says yes, it has a u in it, and it at index 1, which is right, because you have a c, 0, and 1 u, right? If I say j, it should give me 2. Right? It has a lot of methods, right? As we see, there's a very useful one. So that's all I wanted to show you. Personally, I like. So let's go through some of them. Not everything is useful because some of them are deprecated. Like blink, don't use this. It's deprecated. Deprecated means you no longer cannot. If you use it in production, it would say it's deprecated, means it used to work but no longer allowed to be work. But you should, it's inside because as JavaScript evolved, new things get added, but old things stay inside, right? Because just in case, if it's for the backward compatibility reason, anything that used to work should work in a new browser as well, right? You have, ends with, there is italic is kind of useless because it used to work in all. You have match, you have replace. Repeat is an interesting one. Split, okay. Start with substring, then you can do lowercase, uppercase, trim, left trim, right trim. Yeah, so there are a lot of useful. I use, so for example, if I do split, and run this, it basically converts into an array, right? Like a real array, as you can see. So split really means that split the string, because I did not provided any separator, which means, split by characters. But if I have something like this, Cujo, let's say something else, like A, B, C, D, E, F, then I want to split by the space here, right? Then I would just do this. And then it would do 3 elements, right? Here, 3 elements. So it takes a character. For example, if I do, let's say B, right? Now it has 1 B. So it will separate by B, which means it will have 1 array and 2 arrays, 2 elements, right? So the 1 element would have Cujo A and then C, D, E, F, because I say separate by B, split by B, right? So any question on this? This is very useful, actually. If somebody asks you, let's say if I say, let's pick one of your name, let's say Sahil. So Sahil, right? I want to reverse this name. So it should give me Lihas, Lihas. How do I do that?
Run a for loop and join.
Yeah.
Reverse for loop. Reverse method. Something like that.
Yeah. So we already told you, right? Split. Let's do this. So I have if I just put empty string here, means split my dog's name, right? Well, I should not say my student's name. Okay. And then I would do this, my student name dot split. So it should give me each character, right? And it would give me a string, array, right? Now, if I look at array, it has lots of methods. So if I do array _ proto, let's look at it. It has a bunch of methods. So, well, actually I should do not this, but something like this, dir. And one of the methods is called reverse. Okay, where is the reverse here? Do I see it? Reverse right here. You see reverse? So this I already know that this gives me an array. So now I just say reverse, and what do I get?
It will reverse the string, like the array, sorry, not string.
Yeah, it will reverse the array, right?
Then later we can join it.
Yeah, so now I have reversed the array. Now I just have to join it. So say dot join, right? Now I have Lihas.
there is something we can avoid this commas, and we can join it like.
Yeah,
I think no.
I
Yes,
forgot.
no.
I think. Hold on. Let me see. Reverse, split reverse, and I think. Uh, hmm. I Let me see. Split reverse and join. I forgot. I think there's a way to just simply. Yeah, I think you have to put string, I guess. Hold on, let's see. Oh yeah, you have to put this. You have to do this, and then it would do that way. You see? Yeah. So when you join, you have to say join as a string. Okay. Yeah. You see, now I get that. Yeah. So, um, yeah. This is a very popular interview question, by the way. Yes, you can do, split the whole thing and then reverse it manually and all that stuff. We'll go through it how to do reverse and all that stuff in when we look at the strings. But this is to show you the string methods, right? It also has replace. So have you guys used replaced before?
No.
Okay. So replace is nothing but you can, you know, you can use. I can say I want to replace A with B, right? So instead of Sahil, it becomes Sabil, right? Because I did B. Um, then there are other ones like. Oh yeah, this is a new one. I think repeat is a new one. Um, if I say 3 or 2, then repeat. Hold on, is it? It does Sahil Sahil, so it repeats it twice. Okay, if I do, let's say 12 times, it will do 12 times. Okay, I don't know how useful this is, but there might be a lot of use. This is a new one that was added recently. All right. Um, what else? Let's look at more. So if you do proto underscore underscore, you should be able to see all the string methods. Let's see. So the pad start, pad and are new ones. I actually haven't used it, but let's try to use it. Pad start. I don't know, I'm just gonna say A. Let's see what happens. I haven't used it. This one, it just got added recently. Um, Hmm. Let me look at this one. Pad start and pad. Oh, okay. It adds in the beginning. It would add. So if I just do 10, um, oh, sorry. So I have to say first is a position. Let's say if I say 10, then I think it just adds 10 empty space here, as you can see. Um, but if I say foo, then it makes the whole, well, I think it makes the whole length of the string 10, and it adds foo as much as it can. So right now, if you look at the foo, it's one, so the whole length of the string is basically 10, but the sahil was only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so it had to add 5 more. So it added foo and then fo again. Got it? So if I just say a, then it would add like 5 a's to it. As you can see, it added 5 a's. So this is the pad stat, and there is another called pad end as well. Usability wise, yeah, there might be some usability. I'm not sure. I have not used it, but these are all the new ones that were added. That you can use it. Yeah. All right. So any question on this so far? I would suggest practice. So use each one of them and practice.
Yeah, Emil, actually I watched your videos, but the thing is there are so many new things which I learned, but again I forget. But there was nothing to practice. Like, what should I do in that case? Like, I watched your videos. Like, there was now I remember I watched this thing where you discussed about the difference between var, let, and const.
Yeah.
Then I was not able to use it properly, like practice it. And there is also I started this object oriented. And there is one video where you discussed about what was that? The first topic of factory patterns.
Oh, okay, factory pattern. Yeah.
I understood that, but I want to practice it because it was totally new for me. I didn't do that. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, as I said, you need to create for, let's say, okay, I'm gonna suggest something, right? Today by end of today or so, I'm not sure what, I might have to go somewhere after this, but um, by tomorrow I will send you an invite onto that classroom thing, and I'll give you like a 3 or 4 different small homeworks where you can actually apply all of this and do something. Okay, so you get to practice.
That would really help us. Like, we really need to practice on this subject.
Yeah.
Theoretically, we have knowledge, but if there is no practice, we forget these concepts, everything. Like, if you give a lot of use cases, we'll practice. That's for sure.
Yeah. So let's do that way. So
that's true.
Yeah. So what I will do, I will give you 5 or 6 different examples where you can do something, and then few things I will give you where I haven't really taught you. For example, I showed you how to reverse a string, right? Now, I might give you something which you can use one of those other methods on string. So you have to look for it inside. So if you go underscore underscore proto underscore underscore, you will see the methods and find it and then use it. Okay, so I'll give you a few of these examples where you have to actually look for it. Okay, so this way you can discover some of the methods, because I don't want to go through every single method because there's so many of them. And we should not be wasting time in just looking at the um, methods. I showed you a few useful ones so that like split, right, which is very useful. You're going to be using a lot, but you still need to discover. So what happens is that if you try to do something, let's say if you have a problem and you want to repeat some word, right, and you kind of don't know how to do it, you might start writing your own code doing it. You might write the loop or something, right? But you don't know that there is a already method called repeat, which you can use, right? uh, so this way you get familiarized with some of those important methods, so you keep it in your back of your mind that yes, I can do this with this. And again, I'm just going to give you some more homework every time, where you will utilize this more often. Okay. So that I think practice is very important. And we'll also discuss a project today, so you can continue building something. So you have to go back and read it, and so that uh, some so yeah.
So hey,
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
yeah, can you recommend something like suppose today we studied there is a new thing which I didn't like heard about this bad start.
uh, yeah, sure. So you mean, should I tell you which are the important methods? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, hold on just a second. Somebody at my door, so hold on just a
Also,
second. Hold on just a second.
Sorry about that. All right, thank you.
All right, come on in.
All right, what's up?
I'm doing the class, so
Oh, you are?
yeah, just sit here. That's
All
fine.
right, yeah, I'm trying not to hit the light.
The video is not on, so it's fine.
Oh, that's cool.
I have like 4 students right now, so.
Shit, it's right here. Oh,
Oh, be careful, dude. Just gonna.
I just hold
Yeah, hold on.
Oh,
So, okay, I'm gonna start the. I have another 10-15 minutes. Okay.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go use the
All right,
restroom real
okay.
quick.
All right, sure. Okay, sorry, I'm back. Yeah, so let's look at. I'll show you some of the important ones. So let's look at it. Um, we looked at the index of, right? So index of gives you, if you're looking for a particular string inside a string, um, is it there or not, right? So if I'm looking for A inside Sahil, it will tell you that, oh yes, it's located. If it's not located, then it would give you -1, right? But let's say if there are multiple A's inside, then it would only give you the first one, right? Um, but let's say if you want to go from the other way, like from the last index, from the, let's say if there is something like this, Sahial, then if I'm looking for A, so you can look for A from the reverse. So it should say it's a second last. Okay, so in that case, you can see last index of. Okay, so it does from the other side. Um, match is a called pattern matching. Okay, we're gonna look at it. I have already a video on it. If you want to look at the match one, just recently released. Let me see. Have you guys watched the regular expression video?
No.
Okay, I think you should watch that one because that's where regular expression is also a lot of it does a lot of string methods. Say it again. Um, okay, so this regular expression is here. It's a channel. I think it's a third video from top. Yeah, fourth video. Okay, regular expression. This is where you can actually do match. Okay, so it's basically how many of you know about regular expression?
Yeah, I know the concepts of
Regular expression. Okay, yeah. So the match would be using that. Okay, it's very important. You can do lot of string manipulation using regular expression, right? Then you can have like a start with, which if something is starting with if a string is starting with something, right? You would need to know. You can do lower cases. So if it's a capitalized, you can do lowercase. Trim basically removes the spaces. Okay. Trim right and left just remove the spaces from front and the back only. All right. So these are the kind of main ones out there. I don't think anything else. I don't use um, big or blink or bold. Um, concat is useful. You can concat string, but I would rather use the other one, right? The um, template string that I showed you. Um, yeah, so I think that's about it. I'll send you a list so you can practice on them. Okay. Any questions so far?
no.
All
So,
right.
for your videos, would you recommend something like pattern? Like I keep on like I watched one videos, and the next video I was not sure like what should I watch.
So I don't have a lot of basic fundamentals videos, right? I might explain something inside like that interview question video, or I might have a video on the regular expression, but I don't have. So from now on, what I'll do is while I teach particular subject, if there is a video that I want you to watch, I would say, for example, let and const video, right? That is um, um, what we taught, what we learned today. So I'm gonna send that information inside that the classroom discussion. Okay, so you can watch it and keep it to your reference. Okay.
Yeah. And also, can you like give us the topics before you start the class? Like, what would be the next
Yeah,
class
sure.
topics?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, sure. So yeah, every after every lecture, I'll send you um, like what would be the next class, and then I will remind you also when I usually would remind you on Friday that there is a class on Saturday, but if I don't remind, that means yes, still there is a class. If I want to cancel it, I would send you an email saying I'm canceling it. Okay. Um, all right. So because I already have another class where the students are little bit more familiar with it, so I have a little different structure. But I'll have a different structure with you guys since you're a little bit coming from the basic, right? So I wanna make sure that your fundamentals are very strong before we move forward. All right.
Yep.
Okay. Similarly, you can do um, math methods. So we looked at the string methods, right? JavaScript also has the numbers. So numbers have math methods. So if I do console log math, then I should be able to see all the math methods that are available. Okay. As you can see some of the constants as well. So E is, when you do log E, so that's the E, then you would have pi, square root of 2, all that stuff, right? Log 10, all that stuff. 2 base E and all that stuff. Then we have absolute, which basically converts anything, negative to positive. You have cos, sine, all that stuff, tan, which you're probably not going to use that much. Then you have exponential, floor, so you can round the values. Um, high part is, I think, 2 too. High part. Let's say if I say high part 2, which means it's high. I have to use it math.high part. Okay. I think it's like this, my belief. Hold on. This is HighPod is a brand new one as well. I think it's 2 raised to. Oh, you know what? Oh yeah, HighPod is not that high. Okay. HighPod is more like a. Do you know about the Pythagoras theorem? Like, so if you have one side which is 2, one side which is 3, then the other side should be what? Oh, sorry, 3, 4, and 5, right? So one side is 3, another side is 4, then the other side should be 5, right? So that's
to get the hypothesis.
yeah. So that's what it is. So yeah. So you take the square sum of all these square and then the square root of that. The square of got it? Yeah. Yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like hypothesis, it's calculating hypothesis, so it says hypo.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a short form.
Yeah. So you probably not gonna use that much. I mean, these are like math functions. I would say you would use more string functions than math functions, but there are some very useful ones that I use it often. So I'll show you them. But I think you should not. I mean, you don't want to go through them all of them because most of them are probably unless you're doing a lot of math intensive work, right? I would say round. You can random. You can use a lot because you're gonna be if you want to create random numbers, you can round a value. Then I saw absolute you can use where you convert some plus to minus. I mean, so minus to plus. Then square root you can use, and I think, and then power. So if you want to do 2 to power something, right? 2 power to 3 or something like that. And you can use floor as well. So it floors the number, which so like 2 point, let's say if you have some number like 2.3, then it becomes 2, right? Yeah, so, and then you can use a pi, which is a constant here. So you don't have to write your own pi value, right? Yeah, so these are some number libraries. Okay. It also have number. It has 2 libraries, math and number. So number is, it's a dir. Dir means, you know, if you open that up. So here we looked at that, you know, the max value and all that stuff, right? Something, if something is integers, if something is infinite, NaN, you can convert parse int, so you can convert a non-integer value to an integer. So for example, let's say number dot parse int, let's say 2.3 should give you 2, right? It gives you 2. So it converts into like floating to an integer, right? So yeah, so 2 library, math and number library, you can use. Okay. And the reason why there are 2 multiple libraries because they had initially 1 library and then they added a completely new one. And you know how JavaScript works, right? It has quite a bit of things going on.
So Hemil, while I was working, we had a situation where it was like a form. I'm explaining on high level. It was like a form, and we were giving the data type for the number.
Okay.
So where like data type will be number.
Yeah.
So there we didn't want the user to print E. Like if it's a data type number, then user can type E, the alphabet E.
Okay.
So we just wanted to restrict it, but I was not able to do that on that time. Like I did that, I think, from the Google. So if we have time, we can discuss it.
So you were saying that when user enters something inside a field, you wanted to validate it, and then you only allow numbers, right? That's what you said.
Yeah, only allow numbers. I gave the type number. Okay, so type is number. User will only can type numbers. But there is one alphabet called E because it have some exponential values or something that user was able to type E also, and we wanted to restrict it.
Oh, okay, yeah. So that's where, I mean, if you look at the you know that video that I showed you, right? The regular expression.
Yeah.
That I'm doing one, like you can use a regular expression to do that, where you can say D means digit, means allow any digits, and then you can say allow E with it as well. Okay, which means,
yeah, but he want to restrict E.
Yeah, so he restricts means allow, right?
Not allow.
Oh, not allow. So then you just only allow numbers,
but
right?
allows E.
You only want to allow numbers, then it's very easy. Just say, okay, allow only numbers, right? Is it? Maybe I'm confused.
Yeah, but what he was saying was number is even allowing E.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm saying. So if you do regular expression, if I do something like this, D, right? Means it's a digit. Means it only allows, let's say 1 to 0 to 9. Right? If I want 3 digits, then I would say D. Okay? So I'm not saying parse int because then it will allow E also. or is number, right? Then it would allow number as well. But if I, in the regular expression, I can say only allow, because it only looks at as a string, it doesn't look at as a number, right?
Yeah. I think regular expressions is only the solution for that, I guess. Can
Yeah.
you try once if you don't mind?
Yeah. So regular expression, what it does is, um, it basically it doesn't look at anything as a number. It just says, okay, does this have value 0 to 9, right? So if I look at the regular expression tester, for example, a JavaScript.
Hemant, can I share my screen to explain you better?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah, here it is like I gave the input type number.
Yes.
I am only allowed to use numbers.
Yes.
But now I am allowed to enter E. I want to restrict. I don't want to allow the user to print E like this.
Yeah. Then
So
you
because
just then you just say /d plus, which means allows all the numbers, right? That's the
okay, so it will not allow this E.
no. So this is how it works. Yeah, I'll get back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hold on, I have to change the presenter. Okay. So I believe you can do this, right? So it's matching. If I type E here, it won't match. Okay. You see? Yeah. A regular expression is the best way to do it. Okay. So plus means, as many as you can. Yeah. And I'm again, if you want floating point where you need also dot, then you can change this. But you can control it here, right? Rather than, because if you look at the numbers, numbers can have, different formats, right? For example, I can have a hex value. So numbers can be, I can have, let's say, 0x ff, right? This is a hex value. So if I and this is a valid number, right? It's 255. So if I try to restrict as a number, this would not, I can type x, 0x, and it's fine. But in your validation, you don't want user to type 0xff, or you can say, like 2e, let's say 5, which is also a valid number, right? Which is what? 200,000, I think. Yeah, 200,000, right? So this is what you're talking about. It should not allow E, right? Because it is a valid number. Yeah. So you should, because if you try to validate, say, is this a number? Then it would say, yes, it's a number, right? Because, yeah. But in the user interface, you only want the pure numbers, not this kind of nonsense, right? Because this could create problems. Yeah. So use regex to do it. All right. All right. So let's let me see. Okay, we are close to 9, so let's look at the maybe type conversion, and then we'll end today. And then since it's a first class, I want to do not too heavy, at least get some of the fundamentals clear so that you know um, it will be easier next time. All right. Um, so type conversion. So in JavaScript, the type conversion is very odd. I'll tell you that because let's say if I have an if statement, right? And if I put 10, what does it mean?
If true.
Yes, but I gave it a 10, right?
Yeah, I mean, I have that knowledge.
Yeah, so what it would do is, think of this way. So JavaScript thinks, okay.
It's same thing, same concept, right? Auto boxing.
It's not auto boxing, it's type conversion here because I'm not applying any methods here, right? So it will say, okay, if in the if statement you are expecting some sort of logic, right? Which you're expecting Boolean. So if true, then do something. If it's false, usually you would do something like this, right? If x equal to 2, then do something, right? Else do something else. So it's a logical. You need to have true or false here, right? But if I put 10, JavaScript has to convert this into Boolean. And so what it does, it tries to convert into Boolean. And obviously 10 is not Boolean, right? So how would it do it? So it looks at the value and it thinks, oh, is 10, let's say if I do console log here. So if it thinks if it's true, then it should print true, right? Else it would print false, right? So it's printing true. Why is it printing true? Why is it converting to true, 10 to true? Anybody? So it thinks a number that is non-zero. So if I have a 0, means it would consider as a false. You see? But a number that is non-zero is true. So any number. So you have to think it logically. For it will look at number as 0 and 1. So 1 would mean any number that is non-zero, and 0 is obviously 0. So 0 is false, and any non-number is true. So this is how time conversion works in JavaScript. Okay. Similarly, if I say hi, what would happen here? Just think it logically.
True, I guess.
Yes. Because it thinks only empty string should be false, right? If string has some value, which is true, which means if I do this, what would I get?
True.
True. But if I do this, what do I get?
True.
Yes.
What I think is like it will convert string into what is that Unicode numbers, and number is again a true.
Yeah. So empty string is false. Non-empty string is true. Right. Same thing with numbers.
It's like if something has some value, then it will give it to you. If something doesn't have any value,
Yes.
like it will give false.
Yes.
Falsy to I call it.
Yeah, this is called falsy truthy.
Actually, I didn't try not a number and undefined. Can you try once?
Sure. So, let's try undefined. Undefined is always false. Null is always false because it's empty. It represents empty value, right? NaN is also false. Always. So in nutshell, if I want to convert something to a Boolean, then if it's an empty value or a non-value, then it's false. Everything else is true. Just think of that way, right? Undefined, null, they're empty value. Empty string is an empty value. When it comes to numbers, it's 0 and 1. So that's the only thing, 1 is any other number. 0 means 0. So that's how the true false works. Any question?
No. And there was one situation also. We were calling the APIs and we were getting the data and we were showing the data into the tables, and that table was editable.
Okay.
We are calling the APIs, we are getting the JSON data and we representing into the table, and the table in which we are showing it, we use third-party libraries called Angular generic table, or there are so many ng2 smart table or something, like there are so many third-party libraries.
Yeah.
And the data was editable, and it was showing the data which was editable. It was showing value 2.33.
Okay.
Suppose value is 2.33.
Okay.
And when user was able to edit it, it was not coming in like in a format 0.00, like double. So from the back end, from the Java side, the data type was double, and they want me to send the data same data type, like the value should be double, or like should have point and allow 2 decimal places.
Yes.
Like if I put decimal places, 2 decimal places, but even then the user was not from the my end, I was not able to go beyond 2 decimal places. But if I put single value, it was like the condition was like if I wanted to give 10 value 10, it should be like 10.00. That's what I was not able to do that.
Yeah, because another problem with JavaScript is when it converts to number, when it has some numbers are like really weird, because it let me see, I think I can show you one of them. Console log, I think it was this 1.0 plus 2.0, something like that. Okay. Was this one or yeah, one of the numbers that actually gives you like 3.000000 and 5. Okay, even though I asked, it's just
they wanted me to like they said, like for an example, you are going to some online bank form and you want to make some transaction, or you to go to ATM, there would be like there was already 0.00. So make it like this, 0.00.
Oh, okay. So you need to pad a few zeros to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So here, so that for that you can do this. Like, so for example, if I take 1 dot proto, I believe you can see it. I don't know. Let's say, well, let me do this. New number. And it has it has multiple ones, right? There's a 2 precision or 2 fixed. Okay. So you can use this. I believe, don't quote me on this, but I think the 2 fixed. So I can do this. I can say console log 1.2 fixed. I think 5 or something like this. Okay. But I think it won't allow me. Well, let me just do it. I think it won't allow me, but let's just do this. Let x equal to 1 and x. Okay. You see, I have, this is what you're talking about, right? Three. Yeah, you can do that way. So now I have 2. So any number you can restrict it or force it to 2 decimal points.
So from the user end, the user will give give the value 10, and to the backend it will give like 10.00, right? If I put 2 fixed 2.
Yeah. See, I gave 1, right? And it gives me 1.00. Yeah.
Can you try like x equal to 2.6?
Sure. Yeah. And there is another one called 2 precision, which, yeah, so it would do 2.60.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, basically it's saying I want only two precision to be, There is another one called precision. You need to understand this. 2 precision, I told you, right? This one. It's a little odd. I would say don't use that. This one. Okay. It gives you a different result. Let me show you something else. So 2.6 give this. 2.66 would give you 2.7. 2 point this would give you 2.7. Then 12.6 would give you 13. You see? So it's kind of weird. I mean, there is a logic behind it. So I would not use 2 precision. I would use 2 fixed most of the time. Okay. Because if you notice what it's doing is 2 precision is looking at overall digits, right?
Yeah, overall it's making for 2 digits.
Yes.
Wow.
Which most of the time you don't want, right? You just want to control what is a floating point resolution, right? I don't care if it's let's say like this. I don't really care, right? Of this number, I only want to control this. What happens to the floating point? So true precision doesn't work in this case. I'm sure there's somewhere it's useful, but yeah. Okay. All right. So let's how about let's end it here. I think we'll do more conversion. We only did look at the Boolean conversion. We'll do other conversion next time. But let's do one thing. let's decide on the project. Okay. So I want to do two ways, and I think one is I can give you small homeworks on what we learned today, and also one ongoing project. All right. So for that, I am thinking of building a game.